And welcome, Trophy Kids, presented by Bad News Media. It is the NFL Week 10. We are halfway through the season, folks. I don't love that fact, to be honest.
No, it just flies right by. I mean, November, before we know it, it's going to be December, and it's going to suck because both of our teams are going to be firmly out of it. So,
They're going to be firmly out of it, and the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to be playing a wild card game where we all want to bludgeon our eyes out.
yeah, and I mean, thank goodness we did not get a New York Jets victory because they would be in the thick of it as well. And I'm just like, what's
Oh,
going on with the AFC?
God. That the AFC, for a division that we had such high hopes for, I mean, it has really started to come apart at the seams in areas. We'll talk about all those teams, obviously, but we get to start with a nice early bird game, 9:30 Eastern Standard Time, 6:30 for you West Coasters. Pats Colts lines at 2, over under 42.5. We just send our finest to the international markets to really promote the game here, because who doesn't want to watch the Indianapolis Colts and the New England Patriots this year's version at 9:30 in the morning?
Yeah, I mean, we'll take it, but that's just not exactly the way to expand our product. And you would think like you, I mean, this was 300 years ago or whatever, but you think the Patriots, they'd put them in London. But
Fair.
but whatever.
Really, really give them some PTSD over there.
Yeah, just kind of rub it in, you know. But yeah, this game, yeah, not a good one. I just watched my team play the Patriots, and man, I mean, I knew they were bad, but man, they are terrible. That team is horrific. And then they're playing a Colts team, which I wouldn't say they are a good team, but I will put the Colts in the feisty category. They are kind of feisty. They could find ways to win, not win a lot, but they definitely find ways to score. And New England, I mean, that was one of the worst offenses I've ever seen. I mean, they were just bad, dude. And you just like you look at like the leading players on this New England team. I mean, they're going against their leading receiver is Hunter Henry, who has 277 yards, and they're playing against the Colts leading receiver, who's Michael Pittman. He has 593 yards. Their leading rusher is Zach Moss with 615 yards. He's averaging almost 5 yards a carry. And their leading rusher is Ramondre Stevenson with 394 yards, who's averaging 3.7 yards per carry. It's just, to me, I'm just like, this Colts team, while they're not good, they're way better than this Patriots team. So 1.5, I actually really like Indy.
I don't hate it. I will say this. That take you had at the beginning of the season when we did our preseason breakdowns about the Pats being a boring ass team has aged like fine wine. My God, is that clip just it ages perfect. We took shit on that where people were like, this team is going to be better than expected. Nope, it's a boring football team.
Yeah. Very boring. It's so boring that when you hear like the name Ezekiel Elliott, you're like, ooh, that's an old good player. Let's see what Zeke can do. And I mean, he's not going to do anything.
Yeah, absolutely. With it being at the, depending on what shop you're looking at, and this is why you should always shop around. There are 1.5 still out there in the market. There are 2s in the market. I'm going to say it. I said it a couple weeks ago. This is a hold your nose, hold on to your butts game for me,
Hold on to your butts.
because I do think I'm putting the Pats in a teaser mode. And the only reason I am putting the Pats in teaser mode is because the Colts are currently playing the highest level of zone defense in the NFL. 89% of their coverage is in zone, usually cover 3 or cover 4. It is the only time the Pats offense finds any success. They are about a middle of the road passing offense when going against zone defense. And it makes sense when you think about it, because they're guys, they don't have man beaters on that team. It's a lot of players that do well in fitting in windows. When you think of Henry, Kasecki, Parker, these are guys that can find open spaces on defense. And Gus Bradley very rarely changes his schemes defensively. So I do feel like, I don't know if they're going to win the game, because I don't have that much faith in them, but if I can tease them up to 6 and get them over a touchdown, which I am going to do, and I'll kind of give away my second leg later. This is just hold the nose, hold on to your butts, folks. It's going to get ugly, but at 8 and I can tease it up, I kind of like a Pats play. Now straight up, not the case. I'm not doing that, but I do like it because of that matchup with that heavy zone rate.
Mhm.
All right, a matchup that honestly is getting a little bit more interesting and might be on upset alert. I got Texans Bengals lines at 6.5, over under 46.5. So this Texans team is getting hot offensively. CJ Stroud has certainly made his mark for rookie of the year candidacy. The man is absolutely lighting it up. You've got guys like Tank Dell that have been able to stretch defenses. Called that game perfectly, but in classic NFL fashion this season, I can't get a 2.5 cover because the Texans have an injured kicker and refuse to go for an extra point, which is the right move to win the football game. But once again, Nate gets screwed by a wonky NFL season. The line is at 6.5. We saw the Bengals take care of business on Monday night, but sustained some injuries. What do you make of this game at a touchdown spread with the known fact that they got to turn around and play a short week game against the Ravens on Thursday night for the Bengals?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely gonna be a tough one. CJ Stroud's just playing out of his mind. I mean, he's the unquestioned offensive rookie of the year. Like, I can't think of anyone who's even kind of close. I mean, Puka, but still, no.
Yeah.
I mean, you're going to give it to the quarterback every single time. Bengals, though, they're looking good. They've won, what, 4 of their last 5, something like that. They've been playing very good. Joe B's able to move a little bit. We did see him using the little percussion gun on the calf during the last game. That got me a little worried.
Got the heating pad out in I think the second quarter or whatever. I was like, what are you, an old man with the heating pad here? But
yeah, I mean, I saw that and I was like, hey, that's not good. But hey, he looked awesome. Still that's a big spread there. I know it is in Cincy. I think they do, that'll help them a lot, but still, I mean, Texans, they're a team that can stick around. I don't think they're going to win this game, but I do think that they have the ability and the talent to cover. I mean, this team's 4-4. They're actually fighting for their division. Jacksonville's got a pretty good hold on it, but still, I mean, they're not going to roll over. They're young, they're hungry. They got a young head coach who's also hungry. I like them here to be able to cover. I don't really like their chances to win this game, but I do like the over as well. I think this could be a high scoring affair.
I agree with that. I think the Texans are definitely in cover territory because T. Higgins is most likely going to miss this game on Sunday. Jamar Chase is also now banged up because, Joe Burrow, if he hits him in stride, maybe gets a walk-in touchdown and doesn't get banged up on that play. But, he missed and Chase got a little banged up. And so you got your 2 very key wide receivers banged up in what is already an offense that is struggling to break out of its conservativeness. We've talked about this a bunch, but dead last in intended air yards per pass attempt, dead last in completed air yards per completion. Joe Burrow currently out of 32 quarterbacks. Like, we continue to see Zach Taylor have a battle inside of his brain to be like, let's open this thing up and also let's play super conservative. And so you got a banged up team with a Thursday night game against a very physical Ravens team. I do wonder if Zach Taylor and this Bengals offense sort of, once again, elects to be a little bit more conservative. And you've got a Texans defense or offense that can really stretch the field. And I think we are seeing the downside of letting 2 really good safeties leave in Cincinnati. The back end is a little unprotected this year. They've been still trying to figure that out. Lou's one of the best coordinators in the NFL, does a great job with second half adjustments, but this is a spot where they can get got. I don't know the Texans are necessarily going to walk in and run it or win it. I definitely don't want to see this team try to run the ball because the Texans cannot run to save their lives. One of the worst rushing offenses I've seen in a long time. But if the Texans stay aggressive through the air, the Bengals continue their conservative ways, I think this is a very easy game for the Texans to cover. And I don't hate the over here too, because I think that might push the Bengals just enough to get it.
Yep, I agree.
All right, let's talk about a battle of great defenses right now in the NFL. Browns, Ravens, lines at 6.5. Ravens are favored over under 38. These are the 1 and 2 defenses when it comes to total defense in the NFL. They are 1 and 2 in yards allowed, or least amount of yards allowed per play. They are 1 and 2 in net yards allowed per play. They're number 1 and 3 in scoring percentage allowed on defense. They are 1 and 2 in expected points contributed by defense. They're virtually 1 and 2 or 1 in somewhere in the top 5 of every major statistical defensive category. The biggest difference is on the offensive side of the ball. And that is why you are seeing a spread at 6.5 while having a relatively low total. How do you see this one potentially breaking down here?
Yeah, I mean, that is a large spread, but I mean, we have seen these teams play already this year, and the Ravens absolutely stomped all over Cleveland. Now they get to play back home. They're just right now, they're just a very complete football team. I don't really like just their style of play. I mean, this is funny because they've won 2 Super Bowls this millennium with that kind of style of play, but I don't really like them to win like a Super Bowl. I don't really even like them to really go that deep in the playoffs. Um, but right now, I mean, I'd say they're playing like a top 3 team in the NFL. I mean, the Ravens are just they are rolling. This is a team they always seem to kind of get up for, and they, a lot of times kick the shit out of the Browns. Um, Cleveland's basically on offense. It's pretty much Amari Cooper, and like that's it. I mean, it's pretty much the Cooper show. Watson actually, all things considered, had a very a good game for Deshaun last week. I don't think that will happen this week. I think this is going to be one of those ugly Deshaun Watson games. So this is a big spread that I don't usually feel that comfortable on teams covering, but I will go with Baltimore here.
I don't hate it. This is one of those where the defenses are really good, but you look at the offensive side of the football, and there's a big kind of difference there between the two. I came into the season very high on Todd Monken and thinking that he was going to be able to unlock something here for the Ravens offense, and I think that's what we're starting to see finally. They're getting a little healthier. Todd Monken is finally understanding the pieces. I'd like to see him use Zay Flowers a little bit more as a down the field threat.
Same.
He seems to be using him more just kind of run after the catch, working more shorter stuff. But this is an offense that's starting to hum. They play good complementary football. The Browns offense is in a weird spot because the thing that made Kevin Stefanski so successful as a play caller is what he is not doing this year. And that is in part because he tried to tailor his offense to what Deshaun Watson wanted to run. So think a lot more 11 personnel, which is 3 wide receivers, 4 wide receiver sets, spreading it out more, where Kevin Stefanski's bones were made with heavy personnel sets, a lot of 11 and 12. So 1 tight end, 2 tight ends, creative running game, building off play action a lot. That's just not what they've been doing because they've been trying to satisfy Deshaun Watson and make him feel comfortable. But as we've talked about a lot on this show, he's probably washed. So that becomes a bit of a problem. And Nick Chubb obviously being injured is a problem. Losing both your right and left tackle are a problem for this offense. And that is where the Ravens, I think, kind of cover this number. I also put them in the teaser leg to bring them down to virtually a pick 'em and a 6-point teaser. So they are also part of that leg, but I do like the Ravens straight up because the other part of this is the Browns do like to play a lot of man, but they play a decent amount of zone. And man, the Ravens offense is built to kill you in zones. Zay Flowers' ability to maneuver in the open field is marked with Mark Andrews. I mean, it's a scary good football team right now. I don't know if they're Super Bowl bound, but I would agree top 3. There's many that consider them the number 1 team right now, but I would say comfortably top 3 in the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
All right, 49ers Jags. This number I think would be a lot different if the 49ers weren't so turnover prone the last couple go arounds and weren't missing Debo and Trent. But the line is at 3. Jags take on the 49ers, line at 45.5. How do you kind of see this one potentially going?
This one's a tough one. I've always kind of just liked Jacksonville, just the way this team's made up. And just recently what's been going on with the Niners. Yes, they've been dealing with some injury issues. They bring in Chase Young. We'll see how that goes. I mean, that certainly can't hurt. I think he will be more successful in San Fran than he will be here in DC, especially, he's in a contract year. He's got about 8 or 9 games left to kind of really get that, big bag of money that he wants. But then he got Jacksonville, man. I just love the way this team is just rolling right now. I mean, I would say after Christian McCaffrey, I mean, Travis Etienne is playing like the number 2 running back in the NFL, which is just kind of wild because I've always been a fan of him, but I didn't quite see that coming. So I lean Jacksonville a little bit. They're catching 3 here at home. I like that a lot. I think there's definitely, this is one of those games where there's a big push potential, which is I'd like to see it get down to something like 2.5. I think San Fran probably wins this game, but I think it's going to be a tight one.
It's going to be, really tight. Good news for 49ers fans. Trent Williams did return to practice this week because, man, do you need him on that offensive line. That offensive line is not very good. And to be missing your first ballot Hall of Famer anchored to the offensive line makes it very difficult to protect. And I think that's why we've seen more turnovers from Brock Purdy because within this system. He's still finding success. It's just the turnovers have really killed him. I don't know if there may have been a worse game for Steve Wilks to become less conservative in with this one, because the one area that Trevor Lawrence still seems to struggle with is when you bring a lot of pressure, and Steve Wilks loves to bring pressure, but Kyle Shanahan has sort of nipped that in the butt. We talked about it a couple weeks ago. He started attending defensive meetings. He's now making him come down out of the press box and down onto the field to play calls. Like, he's really sort of taken the juice out of that blitzing. And I feel like this is a game where you kind of got to let the dudes loose, because the back end is not shored up. There were rumors. There were rumors that they went out to try to make a play for Jalen Johnson from the Bears, but just couldn't get it across the finish line. And man, did they really need that corner help. But if Chase Young, paired with his old running mate in Bosa, can get it going, that could be a little interesting. I do think the Jags are going to find a little success in defending the run. They're a very good rush defense. I think underrated to most people. Now they're going against one of the better rushing units in the league. But I think that's their key to success. Can they stop the run and put them in obvious passing downs, and then let Josh Allen loose on the edge and see what they can do? Because they don't blitz a lot. So you got to generate pressure somehow. Otherwise, Brock Purdy and this 49ers team are just going to tear you apart, because unless you could speed up that inner clock of Brock Purdy, he is not turnover prone. The only time he is when you got to speed up that clock. Right. Packers Steelers. This is an eyesore of a game. It's at 3. The line over under 39. Steelers are the favorite. I don't know how you feel comfortable backing a Steelers team at 3, but I also don't really feel comfortable backing a Packers team at 3. Like, I caught the falling knife last week with the Packers bet, but man, does this game make me uneasy.
Yeah, I mean, this is just a terrible game. I mean, it's just such a joke that one of these teams is 5-3. It just blows my mind. Like, I can't take it. But the Steelers, they find ways to win. I don't know how. It's so bizarre to me. I mean, Kenny Pickett's in his second season of playing football, and Sam Howell has already thrown more touchdowns than him in his entire career. It's just, I don't understand. This team they're just weird, but they find ways to win. Coaching, it's 100% coaching. Mike Tomlin is an amazing coach. They have a maniac at wide receiver, George Pickens. I don't know what he's doing. I mean, he had 10 yards to get 2 feet inbounds, and he just didn't do it. And then he has the audacity to go on the sideline and pout. I mean, it's just maddening the way that man behaves himself. But I am going to go ahead. I'm just going to take the Steelers because I pick against them all the time, and they make me look stupid. So I'll go with the Steelers.
They are gamers. And that was sort of the evaluation we made in the preseason. I kind of came on here and was like, Pickett doesn't do anything really well, and he doesn't practice well. And there's nothing that they've been pretty honest. There's nothing like super exciting. You read all the beat reports and everybody's just kind of like, oh man, we're really hoping he's a gamer. And then sure enough, the fourth quarter comes around and all of a sudden he turns it on. I saw something like he has the most fourth quarter comebacks now at like this point in his career outside of like Tom Brady or something. It was insane. I'll have to pull the stat and I'll interject it here or throw it up on the page, but it was like one of the craziest stats I've ever seen. But that's just kind of his MO right now. Yeah. This is a weird game. I do like Pickens being a bit of a diva because the NFL is just better when we have wide receiver divas. Like, we grew up in the T.O. era. That's my quarterback, man, doing sit-ups on his driveway with a full news crew out there, shirt off. Like, the NFL is just more interesting with these guys, and Pickens feels like he's the next in line to kind of carry that torch for the diva wide receiver group.
Sure does. Yeah, he is very emotional.
Oh, God bless us. The Packers are, I haven't done anything. This is one of those games where I was like trying to find a way to bet, and I just was like, I say it every week. Sometimes the best bet you make is the one that you don't make. And this feels like a game where I'm just going to kind of stay away from. This is another game where I had a hard time picking up maybe a side, but I do have a potential prop bet that I like. Saints Vikings -3. Saints are favorite, over under 41. How about Dobbs not even understanding what's going on from an offensive philosophy standpoint and beating Trust Fund Baby and Smith over there in Falcons land? I mean, all-time bad look for them. But you now get a Saints team coming into this one. How do you kind of see this breaking down?
Yeah, this one, I also am with you. This one is kind of throwing me for a loop. The Saints are like a 5-4 team that I just every week, every game for them just kind of seems like a real big struggle. It's just like the game ends and you're just like, huh, I don't really know how they just won that game, but they just do. They win games. But I mean, I liked what I saw last week from Minnesota. I mean, Dobbs, he's not a great quarterback, but you got to give it to him. He's having a good year, all things considered. He's been traded twice now in the last like 2.5 months. He was traded right before he started for Arizona. Yeah, I kind of lean Minnesota here. They're playing at home. I don't think home field advantage is massive in the NFL, but I do think in certain stadiums it is. And Minnesota is one of them. Yeah.
Yes.
Minnesota is one of them. So I would take them +3 here. I probably won't do it, but I don't even hate them on the money line.
I don't either. They're playing sort of sneaky good defensive football right now. And you've got a Derek Carr element to this game, but that's the part that I like. And I like Alvin Kamara's props here in the receiving game because the Vikings play a style of defense that is we're going to sit back and not allow anything deep or explosive, and we're going to bring pressure. And to me, that reads a lot of checkdowns from check down Charlie in Carr. They haven't released his just pure reception yet, but his receiving prop is out there. And as far as yards, and I think Alvin Kamara is going to get a lot of check down routes here, and it's going to be a big part of this passing game with just the flow here. But the Vikings defense is sneakily good and getting better week to week. I have no faith in back in the Saints. They are a week to week, just head scratching offense. I don't really know what they try to achieve week to week, but that's kind of the one play I have as of right now in this game.
Yeah.
My Titans take on the Bucks, and man, is this a money game. The line is at 1. It is a pick 'em. Over under 39.5. Mike Vrabel loves nothing more than to bring teams down to his level. The Bucks love nothing more than to attempt to bring teams down to their level. These are two bottom feeder teams just trying to play bottom feeder football. We did see White start to be a little bit more explosive, like we called for.
Yes.
Last week, which was a good call. Do you have a side on this or a thought involving this game?
I do. I like your Bucks pretty handily this week, actually. I just don't. This Titans team, they have some talent here, but just that offense, even though they have some big names on that offense, it's hard to watch at times. I would just give Derrick Henry the ball 100,000 times and just call it a night. Obviously, the Bucks have solid run defense, so that might not work out too well. I just think this is a good opportunity. I think your defense is kind of gonna shit all over this offense. So yeah, it's always crazy putting a lot of faith in a 3-5 team, but I feel pretty good about the Bucks this weekend.
Yep, with Vita Vea coming back to full practice, this gives me much more confidence with the Bucks because without him, we can kind of get gashed on the ground. With him, it is hard to move the ball on the ground. And then you got to pass the ball, which is our weakness. It's what I called for in the Texans game and why I thought they were going to beat us. But Will Levis had a nice intro game to the NFL. People, I think, got a little over their skis with the Will Levis takes. He's sort of regressing back to what I thought. Like you put on the tape, and there are some nice plays in there, but it's a work in progress. So I do like the Bucks. This is a spot where I am picking my Buccaneers. Lions, Chargers. Lions at 3, over under 48.5. And while it is in San Diego, Jared Goff gets his dome-like atmosphere, which helps boost his stats, as we have seen. This is a Chargers team that got a needed win. Keenan Allen went off. But man, you get a good football team in the Lions coming to town. How do you see this one potentially breaking down?
I mean, yeah, they're a good, well-rested Lions team coming in here. Jared Goff obviously doesn't matter, but I'm gonna say it anyway. He's played a lot of games in California in his life, so he'll feel right at home. And yeah, this is gonna be the Lions are gonna be kind of annoying because I don't like, and I know this is the way of the NFL, but I'm not a big fan of this running back by committee. It's just no one gets into the rhythm properly, and it just kind of fluctuates things. I think they had a perfect opportunity to trade David Montgomery before the trade deadline. They didn't want to do it. I mean, they've proven Gibbs can do it, and even their third running back, Craig Reynolds, is perfectly capable of being a number 2. I think they kind of missed an opportunity there. But I mean, at the same time, like, can you have too much talent? No. So whatever. I get what they're doing there. The Chargers, they're a nightmare. I mean, yeah, they won, but man, Herbert just like forgot how to play football this past week. I mean, it was so bad. It was so ugly. I mean, I couldn't believe it. All I needed was 200 yards from the guy on my parlay, and he wasn't even sniffing 200 yards. And so, yeah, I like the Lions here. They're just a good team. They're well rested. I do think they could be somewhat due for a dud, but I just don't see many teams dropping duds against the Chargers because they're duds themselves.
I would agree with that. I don't see a scenario in which Ben Johnson doesn't stuff Brandon Staley in a locker and eat his lunch. From an offensive standpoint, coming off the bye, I think Lions team total bet is certainly within reason here. This Chargers defense, while they've committed the fourth most cap space over the last, 3 years, I think, well underperforming. And as a defensive minded head coach, you cannot have that. But week in and week out, we come on here and week in and week out, we say the exact same thing. This team is just not functioning at the level they should defensively. Ben Johnson is going to outcoach Brandon Staley, which is not hard to do. And so I do think that the Lions, I'm not making this a hard one on myself. The Lions are kind of the side here, I think. Falcons Cardinals, man, trust fund baby Arthur Smith he's out of his depths, I think. Either there's two things here. He's either a mad genius and playing it off like he's an idiot and just playing for a great draft pick to get a quarterback, or he's an incompetent idiot. And I think it's the latter and I would be fascinated to understand what the conversations look like inside that building. Cause you have a GM who is investing capital in good young offensive prospects, and Arthur Smith over here with his dad being best friends with the owner is just refusing to really utilize them. So either they stink or you just don't have the ability to utilize your players. And I don't know how to make heads or tails of it, but I lean to you just kind of stink.
It's the strangest thing. I'll never really understand how you can draft the first round running back and then just be like, nah, we'll only kind of use them. And then like your logic for using them is like, well, running backs get beat down a lot. Well, then you should probably just use them while you can. I don't get it.
He's on the cheaper deal.
Yeah, while he's on a cheap deal, like let's see if he can be a workhorse. But no, Bijan Robinson has one carry inside the 5 yard line. One carry inside the 5 yard line.
Wondering what that noise was, audience? That was your brains exploding, because that is stupidity at its finest.
It makes zero sense to me. However, looking at this game, this is the Cardinals. The Cardinals are bad. Yes, Kyler Murray is playing, but I don't think we're going to see a very mobile Kyler Murray right now. So I think he's there's got to be some rust factor. I probably won't bet on this game because it's just terrible, but I will take the Falcons here. Not very confident with that one, but I got to go with Atlanta.
I do not hate it. This is the Cardinals defense that is allowing the second most amount of possessions to end in a score. 44.3% of offensive possessions end in a score. Incredible. Only worst team is the Broncos right now. So have fun with that. I'm with you. I just, you get your first game back with Kyler Murray. There's going to be some rust there. I'm not betting it. I don't want to bet it. But if you're like, hey, I need a side, I think you probably got to lean Falcons, but I don't like to do it.
I like it.
All right. Commanders Seahawks. Lines at 6.5, over under 44. How are you feeling about this one? You are going to be out in Seattle this weekend. What are your thoughts, feelings? How you breaking this one down?
Yes, I will be in the building hanging out with the weirdo 12s. We'll see how that goes. Should be fun. It'll be wet, of course, because it's Seattle. Kind of surprised by the size of the spread, to be honest, because Seattle's been a very inconsistent team that can't figure out their own identity. I do think that they will probably win this game, but I like our chances at least covering. Gino has been not great, especially his last 3 games, I think, or 4 or 5. I don't know. He's been pretty bad recently. It's something like, I think he has 6 picks in his last 4 games. He's terrible from inside the pocket. So if you could keep him in the pocket, you should be pretty good. I just, if they weren't coming off just getting bludgeoned by the Ravens, I would actually like our chances a lot better. But I do think they do have a really good coaching staff over there who will have that team ready. They'll have them ready for a bounce back. So I worry about that. Worry about, obviously Witherspoon's going to shut down pretty much anyone he's covering. We do have good wide receivers, but they're not the most physical wide receivers, and Witherspoon is very physical. So I think they're going to struggle with him. And if Emmanuel Forbes is on DK Metcalf, oh my God, he's going to break in half. I pray I don't see that. I pray they don't do that to that kid, because that's bullying. No, I like our chances to cover. I don't really like our chances to get a win here. Not that this matters, but we are 7-1 a lifetime at Seattle, not in the playoffs. Not in the playoffs.
Yeah.
We've lost there in the playoffs quite a few times, but not that matters. It doesn't matter that we beat Seattle in 1999 in Seattle, but there is that little tidbit.
I do love when people actually throw that out as like serious stats, where they're like, in the last 20 years, these teams, as if the coaches and GMs and players haven't all.
Jeff George beat them. Okay.
It's one of my favorite, because you hear it the most in college, and it's like, what are you talking about? Like, those kids graduated 10 years ago. Who gives a shit what this has been the last 10 years? Like, the dumbest things. But it is just fun to just throw out there to rub in the face, but it doesn't really mean anything from your betting perspective. The whole time I was looking at this game, I was thinking, man, if only Montez Sweat was still on this team, because he would get after it this week. And I understand why the Commanders got rid of Young and Montez Sweat. It's a rebuild, tear it down, new head coach, they'll have a new head coach. I think they don't have one right now. But new owner who's going to want to get kind of a new feel in the building. So I understand why they did it. But you look at that Seattle offensive line, it is some patchworks. Andy Dickerson, the O-line coach for Seattle, has done a really good job, I think, for what he's been provided with from the offensive line and trying to get him patchwork, but it's a very vulnerable spot. And unfortunately for the Seahawks, you hit it perfectly. They are capped by Geno Smith. Like, this could be a really good team because they play good in the secondary. They have a good defense. They have a ton of offensive weapons. The O-line is certainly down, but you are a bit capped, your ceiling, with Geno. Like, he'll get you. I mean, you're a top 15 team, in my opinion. You're probably somewhere in between like 8 to 12, maybe. I'd probably put you somewhere in there, that range, because he caps you at that place. Like, there's that ceiling you can't push through here. Right. But yeah, I think, the Commanders, they've got a shot here to make a cover. Sleepy Ron will not be sleepless in Seattle this weekend, hopefully. And you can get a nice little cover here.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, let's talk a little Giants Cowboys. The line is at 17, over under 38.5. We have a pretty good running policy about trying not to bet teams over a touchdown in large spreads, but I can see why Vegas made this number 17, because as I talked about last week, Tommy DeVito might be the worst NFL quarterback I have ever seen.
Yeah, he is very bad.
Remind you folks, for those who don't follow college football, this man couldn't keep his job at Syracuse. He then had to transfer to Illinois. It was still terrible. I said it last week. My jaw dropped when I saw that he was on an NFL roster. I could not believe it.
I mean, he had to transfer to Illinois, who
powerhouse Illinois, right? Just a powerhouse program.
I mean, they had an awesome defense.
Very true.
Maybe that's how he made it. People thought Illinois was good, and they didn't realize it was their defense. I don't know.
It was incredible. I could not believe he's on an NFL roster. Sorry, we got distracted from the game.
Very strange. This has to be the biggest spread so far this year.
I don't remember a bigger one.
I don't remember us seeing an 18, or obviously we have not seen a 20. I don't even know that's ever happened in the NFL. But 17.5. I mean, that's big. But Dallas, I know they just lost. They lost to Philly, who, by the way, Philly, anyone can drive against that defense. It's very strange. And going on a little tangent here, but like, Philly's got a great defensive line, but after that, my God, it's bad. But Dallas was able to move the ball very easily. They're going to be able to move the ball very easily against New York here. I imagine they're going to have the ball for a minimum of possession of 40 minutes, I'd say. This is This is going to be an ugly one. And this is a team that already beat New York. I mean, it was the first game of the season, but it didn't really matter because New York's pretty much looked like this the entire season. So they already beat them 40-0. I still won't bet on it, but I do feel pretty confident that Dallas can probably win by 3 touchdowns.
I would agree. I do feel bad for Dallas. I shouldn't say that's the wrong way to phrase it. That last game felt like one of those games, like, of course they lost. Like, that's the type of game where, man, they just can't somehow break through and they need it so bad. Like, this regime needs it so bad. Like, that was like we talk about it a lot in college, like a must-win football game. That's sort of the vibe I got from that Eagles game, where it was just like, man, you are falling short by inches. But this is a game of inches, as we learned from Any Given Sunday. I don't like to bet scores over 2 touchdowns. I probably am not going to bet this one, but yeah, I would say if you want action on this game, I don't see how you don't back the Cowboys. Like, I don't see a single area in the game of football where the Giants have even the slightest edge or neutrality against this Cowboys. Like, the Cowboys offense is finally starting to do things that sort of make sense. We kind of called it perfectly last week, but it's running Dak a little bit more. When CeeDee Lamb has insane matchups in the slot, abusing that matchup, but also being willing to move him around more, and not just have him, take up full-time residency in the slot. And like, they started to do things right. And then the defense, I mean, you get a known passing downs, they're coming after your ass. And you think Tommy DeVito's going to handle that situation well after the last 2 weeks, folks? Like, there's just, I don't see like really any path. Unless there's some real fluky stuff or a major injury in the game, I just don't see how the Giants have a path to cover that number.
Yep, I don't either.
Jets Raiders lines at 1, over under 37.5. We called it perfectly last week. They were gonna get a bump from their intermediate or their interim coach. In comes a Jets team. They are reeling at this point in time. They need to stay competitive to help get Aaron Rodgers back if he's really going to try to make a push. I have some doubts about that. I think this is a lot of TV service. He likes to stir the pot and create drama type of deal. And I think that's what we're really seeing. But if he really is honest about trying to make a comeback, they need to stay competitive, and that's hurting them here. It's a 1-point spread. It's a pick 'em game. Do you have thoughts on this?
It's a tough one. I mean, we've seen it kind of all year, but man, this Jets defense must just be so pissed at their offense. I tell you, man, they did everything that they needed to do last week against Justin Herbert. Obviously, giving up a punt return for a touchdown. Once that happened, I was like, that's it. Jets are done. No way they're winning this game now, which was true. They're an odd team. It's almost like, I was thinking about this the other day. Like, I know he's not happy about it, but Aaron Rodgers getting injured gave Robert Saleh and that entire coaching staff a total pass for this year, and they all have jobs for next season because they're not going to just blow it up and bring in an entire new coaching staff, get rid of Rodgers' boy Nate Hackett. Like, that's just not going to happen. So this coaching staff is just like, they were all pissed about the Rodgers thing, but it saved them their jobs.
Yep.
So like,
and it's gonna hopefully improve their draft stock to go get some help on the offensive line, because man, do they need it.
Yeah, they need that desperately. This is a tough game. It's one of those games where it's just like, I could see Max Crosby just being a complete game wrecker and basically winning the Raiders this game, because all you got to do is force Wilson into a couple of mistakes. And I mean, if you get up on this team 10, my doubts the Raiders could do it, but you get up on this team 10-0, 14-0, the game's pretty much over because the Jets can't score the ball. It's a terrible game. I think the Jets are the better team, but I'm gonna actually go with the Raiders to win this game.
It's funny. I was about to say somebody's got to win this football game, but nope. This feels like a game that could end in a tie. It's just that bad. Like,
terrible.
Somebody doesn't actually have to win this game. This feels like it could be a potential tie game. Which just the worst when you take a 1-point spread. But yeah, this is tough. I think that the Jets defense is doing. So Robert Saleh talked about this at his press conference, and I thought it was a really good point. And something I was going to bring up about how kind of sacks are maybe a little bit of an overrated stat. And I agree with him. It's a very surface level. But the Jets do this incredibly well. They're getting number one pressure rate while blitzing at the lowest rate in the NFL. And that is their distinct advantage on the defensive side of the ball here, because the Raiders are going to want to run the ball a lot. Pierce has been very open about that. And then O'Connell is going to pick and choose his spots. But when you can manufacture pressure without having to bring a heavy rate of blitz and you can drop a bunch of guys back, that is a recipe for disaster. So I struggle to see where the Raiders score points. And then you flip the side of the ball, and you're exactly right. Max Crosby is going to have himself a field day. He is rounded out to be one of the best edge players in football. Like, he doesn't have a lot of weaknesses in his game at this point in time. And this offensive line is laugh out loud terrible. Like, they stink. And so I think a prop bet on Max Crosby to have a sack, because it's usually set at, they haven't set the line yet. I haven't seen it at least come out yet, but it'll probably come out game day. It's usually set at 0.5, so he just needs one. But even if they set it at 1 or 1.5, I'd still take his player prop. And then I might give this out on Trophy Kids, so make sure you're following at Trophy Kids Pod on Instagram and Twitter. But I think an under might be in play, or at least a team total. I'm going to see where this number moves, because I'm having a hard time figuring how these teams score points in this game, unless it turns into some absolute laugh out loud comedy level mistakes. I struggle to see how these teams move the ball.
Yep, I would agree.
We rounded out Monday night. Broncos Bills. Line is at 7, over under 47.5. And man, oh man, if we just didn't see these problems happening for the Bills. If we didn't call for this level of potential regression from the Bills. If only the Trophy Kids have been ahead on this number. I think we've been one of the most honest groups when it comes to the Bills and how Josh Allen plays and how Sean McDermott somewhat puts a ceiling on this team, and just the overall, I don't know, unwillingness to have a set identity offensively. It feels like they are the most polar opposite team week in, week out. Even within games, you'll see them doing things like bringing in tempo and having a lot of success, and then all of a sudden they go at a snail's pace, and just it's crazy what's going on there. But you get a Broncos team that quietly has been getting better defensively, but offensively Russell Wilson is cooked, and not in the good kind of way. What do you make of this game at a 7.5 spread and 47 under?
Yeah, I mean, 7.5, obviously, it's a little aggressive. It worries me a little bit. This is a Broncos team, though. They have won their last 2, and the Bills have lost 3 out of their last 5. I think this is kind of one of those games where both of these teams regress back to their means a little bit. I think we'll see a really good Bills team, and I think we're going to probably see a Broncos team that, is who they are, which is shit. So I
so true.
I don't like betting on 7.5. I don't know if I will bet on 7.5. I might take some sort of, alt spread, then, tease an alt over, something like that. But if I had to, I would still go with the Bills. But they are a maddening football team. Gosh, do they annoy me. I'm just like, Josh Allen will finish with a great fantasy day, but what you just watched, you're just like, I don't know what I just watched. Like, what a roller coaster that was. It's so bizarre to me.
I think it's since 2020. I think it's 2020, maybe 2021. He has the most turnovers as a quarterback, but also the most touchdowns from a quarterback. Like, it speaks perfectly to this. Like, what did I just experience?
Yeah, it does. Like, he's going to turn that ball over a lot, but he's going to do things on the field that, I mean, Mahomes can do it, but basically no other quarterback can do.
Yep. It's and this was the concern when Brian Daboll ended up leaving, and you elected to keep a defensive minded head coach in Sean McDermott, who, to Sean McDermott's credit, when he took over the Bills program or organization, it was in shambles. And he has done a phenomenal job of getting them to this point. But there was that question as to whether or not he has sort of capped their ceiling as a defensive minded coach, as a more conservative mindset when it comes to offense. We heard all the rumblings about how Brian Daboll and him were just having tons of internal fighting over offensive philosophies. And at the end of the day, Brian Daboll was getting the most out of Josh Allen, I think we saw, and we've seen sort of that regression come in. I do think you're right. They return to the means here. The Bills are the better team. I think they get this win and they kind of get back on track a little, but the kind of foreshadowing, I guess, is what I'm going to say here, or speculation. We talked about this in the preseason. They this year don't have the advantage of having a lot of home games at the end of the season and building off that inclement weather that they love to play off. They got to go travel towards the end of the season. And as they continue to get banged up and they continue to have these issues, it's only going to be harder and harder to win football games down the stretch. And they're in real danger territory here for their season.
I mean, they are a cornerback injury away from Josh Norman getting like serious defensive snap time. And one thing I'll give Josh, and we see it on special teams because that's what he's playing now. For a corner, he has no problem getting physical. He will, I mean, I know Derrick Henry trucked him, but I mean, most corners wouldn't even try. But he can't cover anyone. He's so slow.
So slow. And he was so good at one point. But to kind of speak about that, like your final 3 games are at Chargers. You got Pats at Bills, but they're fine with inclement weather. That's not something. You get Miami as the last game of the season, though, in Miami as opposed to in Buffalo. And I do think that makes a difference. You got to go to the Chiefs. Like, you play Cowboys at home, which will be helpful, but you have to go to the Eagles. Like, the stretch in the back end here is rough. Like, you got Broncos, then Jets, and then it goes Eagles, Chiefs, Cowboys, Chargers, Patriots, Dolphins.
That's not easy. And at 5-4, I mean, you're not in the playoffs.
No, this is danger mode. Like, roll the gif of the Simpsons. I'm in danger. This is where they're at right now, potentially. All right. Any final thoughts from a betting standpoint? Things from
nothing major. I feel good about your Bucks. I feel good about the Lions. I mean, I won't bet it, but I feel good about the Cowboys winning by 20 points. So that's kind of how I'm feeling right now.
Yeah, I like my Pats teased with the Ravens. I like Texans. I like Kamara prop in that Saints Vikings game. I like my Bucks. I might add some additional things to the card. So make sure you're following at Trophy Kids Podcast on both Instagram and Twitter to get all the card information. Had finally a turnaround week. We're finally above 500 on my end is really what I'm talking about. A 6-3 NFL week last week. I needed that so badly. Before we wrap this up, I did want to get your thoughts. Eagles are on a bye, so we didn't get a chance to talk about them. Don't things feel a little off? Like, I know they're winning football games and they've got a great win-loss record, but you walk away feeling like things are off, right?
Things definitely feel off. Like I kind of mentioned when we talked about the Cowboys, you can march on that defense, and that's a problem. I mean, I've watched Sam Howell now twice just carve that defense, and then we saw Dak last week do the same thing. Hurts, the offense just isn't running quite as well. He's getting pressured way more than he used to, and he also has that bum knee. He doesn't make very good decisions when he's under pressure. Hurts kind of forgets how to play quarterback when he gets pressured, especially when he's not able to run away from the pressure. I do not. This team, I don't think, what are they, 8-1 or whatever? Their record is much better than who they are, in my opinion. Yeah.
I would agree. And this was something I sort of thought we might see heading into the season, because this is what makes being a dynasty in football one of the hardest things. And we've been sort of brainwashed because we've grown up in the Patriots eras, and now we got the Chiefs there. But like, coordinators go, talent leaves. Losing your 2 coordinators, I think, was more devastating than we may have officially realized. Like, we talked about how Brian Johnson was probably going to struggle to find himself as a play caller because he's only done it one other time in his career, and it was at the college level. He's never done it on the NFL level, and I think we're seeing that offensively. And I think defensively, to your point, I don't know if they found their identity yet. Like, they feel drastically different from last year's unit, which is weird because you look at the parts and you're like, the parts are good, but something feels very off and wrong here.
Very often, like you said, the offensive play calling is just odd. I mean, last game it was 3rd and 3. They need a first to win the game. This is a team that always goes for it. If it's 4th and 2 or less, they're going to go for it. And they just throw like a ball with like a 5% success rate, like 20 yards downfield. I'm like, why didn't you just run and then just run again and get the first down? Game over. I don't know what they're doing. It doesn't feel good, and they're kind of in the middle of that schedule gauntlet, but they're really, really entering where it gets really hard.
Yep. And it's going to fall on Nick Sirianni, who I've questioned his head coaching ability.
Me too. Me too. He loves the camera. Let's be honest.
Yes. And so it will fall on him. They need to really utilize this bye to figure out what kind of football team they want to be and identify what they're going to do, because they don't feel like they're playing with that edge, and they feel like they're lacking a bit of an identity, both offensively and defensively. They feel like they just don't have a grasp on how they want to go about things right now. And it's weird. It's off. I know the win-loss column doesn't show that, but I'm glad we're lining up there.
I'm with you.
All right. That'll do it for us this week. And as always, peace.